starting this off here today. It's Monday, October 24th of 2022. And just getting together to kind of shoot the breeze with a bunch of family members here about our memory of automobiles, what we've done with them through our families, and the ones we've owned, and how they've kind of created our history, would you say?
Definitely.
Yes,
they've affected everybody, kids and everyone.
Yeah.
I'm Cheryl Kimberly. I was married to Jack Kimberly, and I'm a sister-in-law here.
Brother Tom, born in 51, third of a line of 4 boys. As Ray said, 2 of them gone. Had a history of cars with the family, and going to do a little get-together here and talk about them a little bit.
I'm Ray Kimberly. I was the second of 4 boys. Older brother Jack is deceased, myself, my brother Tom, and our younger brother Charles deceased. We've been in cars forever.
This car is a 1925 Studebaker Standard 6. And it was the smallest of all the Studebakers that they made that particular year. By far the least deluxe of any that they made at the time, and was maybe a third more expensive than a Model-A might have been. This particular car was painted in 1950-51. It's pretty much an original car. You can see that it's beginning to try and return to its natural self at this point. What do they call it? Entropy, I guess, the tendency of things to want to return to their basic state. The car is probably what started our family on this journey of interest in automobiles. My dad bought this from a farmer who was sitting in a cornfield out there in Copley Circle, and he'd been looking for a car for probably, maybe 6 months to a year. And a guy by the name of Ed Breeden sold it to him on a Sunday. Paid $125, as I said, for it. We took it home and cleaned it up, and my dad would take trips with my brother Jack and I to Niagara Falls. We went up to New York in it. We were down in Washington, D.C. The car's been to Montreal, to, I think, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit. A car that you can't very well drive today because of the speed limits and stuff. Its comfortable speed is about 35 to 40 miles an hour, and you can't do that on today's highways. But we use it, on picnics and stuff and little local sojourns around town. I don't think this car's ever been in a wedding, but it's been in a lot of parades. When Dad bought it, at that time they were into the old Peerlesses and the brass cars and everything, and this would be a little bit like today, like trying to take an antique Kia to a Ferrari convention. Now, nobody was interested in this car when we were taking it to car shows because it was such a plain Jane and so unattractive compared to what was out there. But no car could have been loved more than it was by our family. This car has a small 6-cylinder engine. It's, I think, maybe a 242 cubic inch, 27 horsepower car. For a fuel pump, they had a vacuum tank. This would be the vacuum tank, and it sucks the gasoline up from the gas tank in the back into an upper chamber, and then closes the valve, dumps the gas into the lower chamber, then it's gravity feed into the carburetor. And while the gravity feed is working, the vacuum tank reactivates and repumps the gas. It comes down into the Stromberg carburetor, which is an updraft carburetor. Stromberg made them for the white trucks, they made them for the Peerlesses, they made them for the Lincolns. They made carburetors for just about everybody. It's a seamless carburetor. This car, it's been in the family since 1951, and I hope it stays in the family for a lot more years to come.
This is a 1926 Model-T Speedster. One of the things we loved doing was entered into the Old Car Festival at Greenfield Village, and that is the oldest old car festival in America.
1, 2, 3.
Jack would take people for rides all around the village, and They loved it. A lot of people wanted to buy this car, which of course we would never do. But a lot of people would like to have bought it, so we told them how to make it.
And we're still rolling.
This is a 1926 Model-T Speedster. In the old days, this is what people did, would take them apart and make race cars when the brass pieces were characteristic of a Speedster. We have always used this car as a fun car. It was developed pretty much from 1976 until 1980, when Jack and his dad started building it piece by piece. Their brother Ray also worked on this car. You did not see any of the top of this car at that point. It was just basically a frame and wheels. When they could start driving it, they did not have seats, so they would put cushions from another car in here so they could sit and ride in it. And we have a wonderful picture of Jack's parents sitting in those seats before it was anything like this. Gradually it evolved from the frame getting painted. Jack and his dad made all the woodwork pieces, which are on the front here and in other pieces. This toolbox, I think my husband made this. This speedometer right here is made from a tin can. A friend of ours made the seats for us. We have a seat belt under here, which my husband put in for our grandchildren. And that helped keep our grandchildren from falling out. But one of the things we loved doing was taking it to Greenfield Village, entered into the Old Car Festival, and that is the oldest old car festival in America. One of the fun things that is to do, they have various kinds of games like having a pole and sticking it into to catch potatoes on the ground, having a plate with a glass of full water and trying to keep the plate and the water on your thing all the way down the field. Many other games like that. Everybody loved that. And of course, everybody wanted to win. And everybody always got a ribbon for being in that game, as well as for being in the car show. So you could end up with 2, 3, 5 ribbons when you went home. The year of 2008 was the 100th anniversary of the Model T. And at the end, we all received unexpectedly at the final dinner a wonderful touring coat and matching hat. That was a very, very nice surprise. Other things that we did with this car were parades. A lot of us do the 4th of July parade every year. And we started doing this with our daughters when they were just 10 and 11. Then we graduated from having our children to our grandchildren coming with us. And that is when my husband got the idea of having the seat belt for them because they were so young and so little. As we went along, they gradually started getting bags of candy that they could throw out to the people on the sides of the street, and everybody loved that too. All the little kids would come out and get the candy, and that was fun. There are some pieces I helped add to this car for Christmas presents. This monocle windshield. It did not come with this. That was my idea. Keeps the bugs out of your teeth. I originally got just the brass part, and then we had to take it to a glass maker who made the glass part of it. The winged feature on the front was another Christmas gift. It keeps track of the temperature. And then I have a horn over here that I also got. And to show you what a perfectionist my husband was, I gave him this horn, and I made sure that they got the best one. But he wanted to make sure it was the best one, so we had to go back down there and look at the other one that was left. And he still felt that it was the best one, so we kept it. The horn, the ooga ooga, you know, if you go down the street, all the little kids will say, honk your horn, honk your horn. We also have a horn here. My daughter can drive this car, and my husband even had started teaching one of our grandchildren. She got big enough that she could reach the pedals. This is the wonderful car we love, and we've enjoyed it every minute that we've had it. Bye. Thank you.
This is a 1928 Model-A Hotrod. And the idea in building this car, or making this car, was to try to keep it all pre-World War II. So everything that you see on this particular car is made by Ford and was available or could have been had prior to World War II. Now, there are parts on this car that are reproduction parts and are not the original parts, but they are all period pieces, replacements. This car was made entirely out of parts. We bought a frame, we bought the wheels, we bought the motor, we bought the body, and then assembled and put them on the car. It took about 10 years from inception to completion to do this car, because we did it, in evenings, and maybe we'd work on it, run into a problem, and stop for a month or two or three and think it through and then start again. But the concept for this car came from my brother Charles, who gave me a small book about how to build a Model-A Ford Hot Rod. And from that book, which was almost like an erector set, I was able to piece this together. It's been a work. Our brother Jack and I worked on it, and my sons worked on it a little bit. But it's a bunch of hodgepodge parts. They've been modified. It has an Edelbrock manifold running Stromberg carbs on it. It's got a 3/4 race cam in it. It's got high compression heads. The engine is out of a 39 Mercury. The transmission's out of a 39 Mercury. The front axle is out of a 32 Ford. The wishbone down through here is a 34 Ford. The brakes on it are a 1940 Ford. The wheels are 1940 Ford. The radiator is a 1932 radiator. It's a 32 modified hood. The dashboard is out of a speedboat, or the cluster in there. It's a 32 dash and a 28. Has a quick change rear end in it. The idea was that you could drive them to the racetrack, and once you got to the racetrack, change the gearing so you could race the car, change the gears back out, and drive the car home. All that stuff was available before 1942. And it's just a lot of fun. We've had it down to New Jersey. We towed it out there, ran it on the beach. It's been in several parades. It probably attracts as much attention as any of the cars that we have. I just hope it stays in the family. It's just been a great car, just a really good car. People ask me what's the difference between a street rod and a hot rod. You open up the trunk in a street rod, you can find a can of wax. You open up the trunk in a hot rod, you're going to find tools and parts. And this is a hot rod.
I'm Cheryl Kimberly. I was married to Jack Kimberly, and I'm a sister-in-law here.
Brother Tom, born in 51, third of a line of 4 boys. As Ray said, 2 of them gone. Had a history of cars with the family, and going to do a little get-together here and talk about them a little bit.
I'm Ray Kimberly. I was the second of 4 boys. Older brother Jack, deceased. Myself, my brother Tom, and our younger brother Charles, deceased. We've been in cars forever.
And here we are in Akron, rubber capital of the world back in those days, where Firestone Tire and Rubber and Cyberling Tire and Rubber, Goodyear, obviously General, all of them started here. What was the cost of this car, I guess, basically back in the day?
This car was probably about a $400 car back in 1929. Whereas some of the other ones, like the Studebakers and the Packards and the Chryslers, they could be up to $1,800, $2,000. But this was truly everyman car. The Model-T was more so than this, and very reliable. The steel in it was a special type of steel that he had, and a lot of forgings. That's why the car survived, because it was so well made, so well made. Palladium steel, I think, is what they called it.
He made his own steel, didn't he?
He made his own steel.
I was going to throw that in because I've been to some classes about Henry Ford, and he owned everything he needed to make a car. He bought the steel plants, he bought the cardboard plants, he bought whatever goes into a car, the material plant. He owned everything.
But the only thing he didn't was the tires. He did buy the
Yes,
tires
that's
from
right.
Firestone.
But he did get those from Firestone.
So as far as originality goes on this particular car, I would say just about every part that's on this particular car was available or made by Ford or has a Ford trademark. It doesn't have the wrong engine, it doesn't have different sized tires, it doesn't, everything on this car is period piece, and although some of them are reproduction parts, it's basically an original car. It would not show well because so many people know about Model A's that they would know that the screw was wrong or the hubcap was not supposed to be chrome but nickeled, but as far as the average person goes or what the car functions and does and drives, it's an original car. Back in the day when this particular car was built, the speed limit was probably 45 or 50, but nobody drove that speed because the roads wouldn't tolerate it. So this was probably driven between 25 and 35 miles an hour most of the time. Top speed in this car, I've maybe had it up to 60, 65 miles an hour. But it doesn't like that. It's happiest at between 45 and maybe 50, 52, 55. This particular car, I would think it was 1970 or 71. We were on one of our annual car outings to Hershey, Pennsylvania in October, which we went to for 35 or 40 years. And my Uncle Paul, unbeknownst to any of the six of us at the show, decided he was going to buy a car. And he went out and went through the market and found this car. It had just been restored, finished restored. He paid $3,000 for it and didn't look for the sins in the car or anything, just wanted to buy the car because he wanted to be part of the group that had a Model A that took a trip, because my brother Jack had one, my dad had one, he wanted to bond with my dad, wanted to do that kind of stuff, so he bought this car in Pennsylvania, and we drove it home from Pennsylvania, and I don't think we got 100 miles, and the fan blade got loose and about fell off of the thing. I mean, whoever put it together with a screwdriver and a hammer. And we finally got it home. Paul was always finding problems with it, but they took it to Atlanta, Georgia, or Rome, Georgia, on a family trip. I didn't go with it. And on that trip, the front wheel bearing went out, and they shimmed it with a beer can to get it home. Well, by the time Paul got back from that trip, going through the mountains and everything, he'd had it with his car. So he said, let's go to lunch. So I went to lunch. Instead of going to lunch, we went to the title bureau, and he said, it's your car. So he gave me the car in 1971. And ever since then, I've been fixing fan blades and wheel bearings and everything to keep it going. But the car has been in the family for years. I've taken my kids, oh gosh, all over in this thing. I've had it out to Nebraska. I've had it up into Canada. I've had it, I can't tell you how many times, to Hershey. It's been all over. It's just a family tradition. And it's been touched up a little bit, but it's basically the same car. And I'll bet we put 15,000 miles on it, just taking trips.
Lord.
Incredible. So that's basically the story on it. Still a real strong runner.
So what do you remember about Dad in the cars, in the Model A's?
Well, you know, I think it goes back to starting with Dad and, you know, his interest in cars. The one I always heard about was a Terraplane when he was a kid. In 1951, the year I was born, Dad had just started the jewelry store, and he bought the 25 Studebaker down in
Copley.
Copley.
Okay.
Okay.
Right by Wallyville there, yeah.
It was in a barn. You were there when you pulled it out of the barn?
Well, it was actually in a cornfield when I was there when we pulled it out. It was Sunday about 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Tires low and dirty. And
tires were low. I'd been sitting in there for about a year, and I paid $125 for it. Bought it from a guy by the name of Ed Breeden, who was restoring a Packard and lost interest in the Studebaker. And we drove it home. We actually drove it home. That was the beginning of it.
Again, purchased in 1951. The car is still in the family. Ray owns it still. When he bought it, it was 26 years old. Today it's nearly 100 years old. It's
right.
97 years old in 2022. And when I was away at college at Bowling Green, Dad bought a Model A.
Yes.
Wasn't happy with it. Remember that?
I do.
And he ended up selling that thing to Al Goldsmith, a
Right.
gentleman that I eventually started to work for
Yeah.
and got into the rubber and plastics business with.
The one that Jack has now, Dad bought from people in Ravenna, and Jack liked it so much that Dad gave him the car.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jack. So the tan one, Dad gave that to Jack because Jack liked it so much.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And then Dad wanted a Model A, so he got that 29
Sedan?
sedan.
Okay.
And he tried to buy it. It sat over on Kenilworth Drive, and he was trying to buy it. And the guy wanted too much money for it. Well, while Dad's bargaining with the thing, somebody comes down the street a day or two or three and hits it and takes the whole
Rear fender.
rear end off. They have the rear fender and everything, bent the frame. So Dad went over and bought the car for $800. The guy, I think, originally wanted like $2,500, $2,800 for it.
Then he bought the one that he sold to Al Goldsmith
Yes.
that was screwed up, and then he found the one that I have, the 30
Exactly.
Model A Ford Sports Coupe.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful car.
Yeah.
We left the auction. He had Dad's yellow 63 Cadillac, 73 Cadillac.
73.
We're driving down and said, damn it, he said, for $500, I'm going to buy that car. I don't care. I'll pay his price. So he found the guy. The guy was going down the road, and he actually caught up with him and bought the car at the side of the road. And the kid, his son, started crying when his dad sold the car. And man, that was a beautiful car.
That's one heck of a car.
God, that's the nicest Model A we've got.
Yeah.
People always ask me, if you could only have one car, if you had to get rid of all the cars that you have, and only could keep one of them, what would you keep? And I'd have a hard time between this car and the Studebaker.
Well, I remember the story about you and the gasoline incident.
Oh God!
Yeah. In this thing, maybe you don't want to talk about that.
Oh, I
because
remember
we
that.
edited it out.
Yeah, we were going to take David out to Nebraska, and an acorn got stuck in the overflow on the radiator, and it built up pressure. I knew it was running hot. I pulled that radiator cap
that's
off,
what it
and it
was.
blew
Okay.
steam. Hot water and steam burned my arm up, and I was only probably 40 miles from home when we were on our way to Nebraska. I looked at my arm and I said, "This trip's over." I came home, and for about a week and a half, I was at the burn unit down at Cleveland Children's Hospital getting that wound treated.
Son of a gun.
I remember that really well. And then I got burned again with that street rod. The same damn thing. I bumped the radiator, knocked the hose loose,
Oh, my God.
and I got burned the second time.
Where was that?
That was my driveway at home. And I remember when it happened, I said, "Oh, shit, not again."
Not again.
Went and stood in the shower, and the skin was kind of peeling off my face.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
no antifreeze. Anyway.
You'd take 3 kids in this thing, and it would be kind of tight for them.
Oh, God. Yeah,
Remember that?
I sure do.
Remember how much my butt cheek used to hurt on the right side after Chuck was always in the middle.
Yeah. Well, Dad made Jack sit in the middle because I was so much smaller. I could really see over the window in the Studebaker. So, I don't know when he decided that, but early on one of the trips, he said, "Well, Jack, you're going to sit in the middle because Raymond, if he sits in the middle, he can't see anything." So, man, I loved it. I had sitting there like a dog with my head hanging out the window before Jack stuck in the middle. With that heat, it was really kind of fun.
This car is a 1930 Model-A Ford Coupe. It was bought from the second owner of this car, so he sold it for $2,400, 1969. My husband loved antique cars because his dad had a 1925 Studebaker, and he had enjoyed that so much. He and his brother Ray took trips in it by themselves because they were old enough and big enough to drive it. And so this was a thrill to Jack to get this car. He loved it. We took a lot of trips in this car with his parents. I think they were driving their Studebaker. We were driving our Model A. We went to Canada and New York City. We put the cars in a parking area underneath the hotel, and they paid another man who worked there to watch the cars so they wouldn't get vandalized or anything like that. We went to his aunt and uncle's house in Georgia, Margaret and John. We went to Lima, where I am from. We went to Niagara Falls. We went to Pine Tree Barn. We went to Spread Eagle, various restaurants that were away from the city. and it was always fun. Everybody always wanted to know about it, and we often left the rumble seat open because it looked cute like that. When our daughters were big enough, sat in the rumble seats. You could get 2 people in it, but if they're small like our daughters were in the beginning, they would take 2 friends with them. So we'd have 4 little girls in the back seat. This car has a blind in the back, and you can pull it down so they can't see what you're doing in the car. So to tease them, we would do that all the time so they couldn't see us. We a lot of times took ice cream rides, and the summer was a great time for this car because with the rumble seat, if it's not raining, it was a fun thing for the kids. And sometimes we would be driving and actually see turtles crossing the street. So we'd stop, my husband would get out, pick up the turtle, take it off the road, and keep going. And that was exciting for the kids. It's restored. This is restored. This is the second restoration right now. And we actually had talked about doing restoration for this car also, but that didn't happen. So we have enjoyed it like this as it is now. This car, it's like a member of our family, and they are. We love them. This is the inside of our 1930 Model A Ford, and as you can see, it's not real wide, but with little children, both our daughters when they were real little, we all 4 could sit in this seat very comfortably. When they got a little bigger, then they were able to sit out in the rumble seat, which is right behind us, and there is a glass dividing us from them, but we always knew what was going on because we always watched them. My husband installed this mirror here. That was not on here originally. But otherwise, this is just it's a very comfortable car, and it's certainly very fun. We love it. Thank you so much for coming and talking with me, and here is a goodbye message.
So what do we have here, Ray?
Well, this is a 1932 Ford Sedan Deluxe, 2-door Sedan Deluxe. And this was the next generation or next body style or modification from the Model A Ford that they made from like 1929 to 1931. And in the early production in 1931, Henry Ford stopped making Model A's altogether, just quit. Couldn't sell them. They weren't moving off the lot. He didn't ship anymore. Dealers sold what they had. Dealers had to pay for all the parts he sent them and other stuff, but he basically was going to design another car. And this is probably my favorite body style of all the Fords. Edsel Ford is the one that basically is responsible for design. And it's a miniature Lincoln. You'll notice the beautiful roundness of the headlights, the big round headlight on it, the round radiator grille that's not chromed, the roundness of the fenders. It was almost like the beginning of the Art Deco period that he did this. And we're fortunate to have this particular car because it is really a beautiful representation of it. Earlier, I mentioned about I'm not a big fan of modifications or changes in cars. I like to keep them original. When I got this particular car, it looks just like it does now. Mechanically, it was a wreck, but as far as the body concerns and everything, it looked like this, and it's been modified. It's got 35 Kelsey Hayes racing wheels on it. It's got a 1948 flathead Ford engine in it with a high compression heads, dual carburetor, all pre-World War old style stuff. Whoever did this car, it wasn't myself, just did a beautiful job of doing that. So I haven't brought it back to originality because I think it's such a wonderful representation of a pre-World War II hot-rodded car to try and get it to run better. This particular engine is a 48 Ford engine, but it was made in 1939 by Mercury, so it has the same block. So ideally, it is a pre-World War II car. We bought this in Hershey, Pennsylvania in 1986. I think I paid $17,000 for it. The guy wanted $23,000. I bought it the last day of the show because somebody else had made a bid on it but never came back with the money. I gave him a $1,000 deposit, and he wanted cash. So my dad went down with $17,000 in cash to Tennessee to get the car, and it was in a shoebox. I'm telling you, that's a lot of $100 bills. And he went down and drove the car back. And since then, we've been through it mechanically, trying to get it to run right. We finally have it so it'll run. For years, it wouldn't run very well at all. But it is absolutely a gorgeous, gorgeous car. And I feel fortunate to have it in the family and to be able to say that we're the caretakers of it, because this is a car that'll go on forever. We're lucky. The family has, Cheryl and Jack have a Model-T. Cheryl and Jack and myself and Tom have a Model-A. That's the next generation of cars. And then we've got this 32 Ford, and it runs from 1932 to 1940, which is what they call the skinny cars. And then in 41, they went to the fat cars. Well, we also happen to be lucky enough to have a 1940 Ford. So it's the beginning of that skinny Ford, end of the skinny Ford, and we still have them in the family, and we're lucky to have that. This particular car really, really, really runs well. It'll go 65 miles an hour, keep up with traffic, steers, stops, does everything a modern car will do, as long as you get enough space and don't tailgate somebody. It's a very reliable and, believe it or not, comfortable car. Probably of the older cars, this is the most comfortable one to sit in. And it's soft riding, it just really handles well. This is a bulletproof car. If you said you had to go to California, which car would you take? I'd probably take the Model-A, or I'd take this, because they're just like a tractor. They just run. So. And one of the reasons I bought this car was that my dad, as a kid, remembered when this car came out, and he had a school teacher who lived up the street from him on Store Avenue, and he bought one of these cars. And Dad thought it was the most beautiful car in the world. My uncle that gave me the car left me some money when he died. Dad liked this car. I thought, well, Dad won't take the money, but if I buy the car, Dad will drive the car. Yeah. And he did. He drove it quite a bit.
He enjoyed it. Yeah.
He enjoyed it. Yeah. So that's why we have it. I got to show you this. This is absolutely, whoever did this just did a beautiful job. Mechanically, it wasn't set up right, but
had all the parts.
It's got Elderbrock heads, Elderbrock carburetor. This is a slingshot manifold. They were screwing around with trying to get the best carburation they could, so they could race them on the flats and stuff. So they went to this what they call a slingshot manifold. Takes the two carbs, moves them back so you can get the generator underneath it. For the day, this was a rocket, just an absolute rocket. And I'll just love looking at the engine because it is so beautifully done.
It is beautiful.
And I'd love to take credit for it, but it was like this when I bought it.
How many cars have you guys pulled out of Hershey, do you think?
Well, let's see. We pulled the Chevy, your Oldsmobile.
The Oldsmobile came out in 91.
Came out of there. The Model-A Ford came out of there. That's 2. This came out of there. That's 3.
Jack's car 4.
Jack's car 4. And
Model-T frame.
The Model-T frame came out of there. The frame for my street rod came out of there. The red Cadillac came out of Carlisle. The Model-T that Cheryl has, that frame came out of Carlisle. Trying to think what else came out of there. We've been good to those car shows.
Oh, God, I'll tell you. Son of a guy.
We've been good to those car shows. But, when you get with a bunch of guys, you lose your all sense of reality.
Yes, you do.
Start talking about stuff, and all of a sudden you get the bug, and then you go home and tell your wife what you did.
and get in trouble.
That's like, well...
Or like David would do, call Dolores and say, I'm thinking about doing this. He goes, no.
Yeah, get the no right off, yeah.
Parts, thousands of parts.
Lots of parts, all kinds of stuff. It's a disease.
The new Ford cars for 1940. These are really modern cars with a strong, graceful beauty that continues throughout the length of the body in both the Deluxe and the Ford V8 models. Big cars with long hoods, long lines, and attractive use of bright metal. New interior beauty, too, is a feature of the 1940 Ford cars. The Deluxe Ford has a smart two-tone instrument panel in maroon and rose sand, with 2 conveniently placed ashtrays, and with a new instrument grouping that puts speedometer, gauges, and headlamp beam indicator directly in the driver's line of vision through the new two-spoke steering wheel. Both the new Deluxe and the lower-priced Ford have fingertip gear shift on the steering post at no extra cost, and with special significance for women drivers. Shifting can now be done with the fingertips. Because the gear shift lever is mounted on the steering post, there is more leg room in the front compartment. For further quiet, both Ford cars now have the blocker-type transmission used in the Mercury and the Lincoln Zephyr. Comfort with a capital C is a mighty important feature of these new Ford cars. But now, let's look beneath the hood. Again this year, the V-type 8-cylinder engine that has given dependable, economical performance to more than 6 million owners. The engine that has made the term V8 synonymous with the Ford name.
Okay, this is a 1940 two-door Sedan Deluxe, which was the high-end two-door sedan for Ford at the time. It was the last of what they called the skinny Fords or the narrow Fords. Of the three Fords, the V8 Fords that Henry made, the 32, the 38, and the 40 were considered the most stylish and the most sought after. This particular car my dad bought in 1978, probably less than 10 miles from where we live, by a man who restored it and then couldn't get it started. He set it up and the engine was so tight that it wouldn't run. And he wouldn't let my dad drive it or start it before he bought it. And we got it home, and I think Dad finally figured out it just needed to be run in. So he just drove it. I can't tell you how many times it was pushed home or stopped, and finally it wore in and we could drive the thing. And once again, I converted the ignition to that Protonix electronic ignition igniter. Made all the difference in the world. You can't tell it to look at it, but it'll start and run. This car's been all over the place. It's been, gosh, to Hershey, Pennsylvania, down to Florida and back, I think twice. Niagara Falls, Canada. It's a driver. It's also, as the red Cadillac, it's a wedding car. It's been in Katie's wedding, both Katie's, Katie and Katie, my granddaughter, both of our sons' weddings, David's wedding. It's been used for parades. It's just a car that people take. They'll come and say, can you take me around in a parade? And sometimes we'll say, well, I can't make it. Just take the car. And it comes back as nice as it left. It's really been just a great automobile. We redid the interior probably 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And it was repainted back in maybe 1998 or something like that. I can't believe how well it's held up. I wish I could tell you, it's just a great driver. We take it just about everywhere. And most of the time it brings us home. So.
Yeah, I really love it.
He did. I can tell you a cute story about it. It was in the garage, and it hadn't run for about a year, and the battery was dead, and we had to pull it out of the garage because it had this big dip that went down in a dirt floor. And I started pulling him out. Before I pulled him out, I said, if you need me to stop for anything, just blow the horn. Well, hell, the battery's dead. So I dragged him across the door and took the passenger's rear fender and just flattened it. I mean, I couldn't believe it. He got out of the car. He said, what you doing? I said, you didn't blow the horn. He said, the battery's dead. Got the little 90 horsepower flathead V8 in it. Basically the same motor that's in the 32 that we looked at in my street for my hot rod. You can tell it's the 49AB or earlier because the distributor is in the front. Comes off of the front. This happens to be a 42 distributor cap. It's a Stromberg carburetor, and it's basically a two-barrel carburetor, but it has a single throat going in so that you can time the two together so it has a uniform draw. It was, I believe, the first year for the voltage regulator so that you don't have a cutout on the top of it. I may be wrong about that. That might be happened in 39. It's the second year for hydraulic brakes, first year for seal beams, and first year for the split windshield. And it has a column shift on it. That was first for a 40 Ford. Ford had a tendency to take their deluxe model from the year before and then turn it into the standard model the next year. So a lot of people objected to buying the deluxe because they knew in a year it was going to look like it was an older car. But that was typical of Ford. Actually, straight pipes on it. I put duals on it to make it run cooler. And it sounds like a rocket when it starts.
I'm Cheryl Kimberly. My husband was Jack Kimberly and was the proud owner of this car. He bought this car, a 1949 Chevy, on October 11th, 1986, at the Hershey Car Show for $3,500. Now, the irony of all of this is this car is a duplicate of the one he bought when he got his driver's license for $450. So I guess the appreciation was pretty obvious. He was thrilled. He loved this car. He called us when he had found it and to see what I would think, and I said, oh, get it, get it. And when he came home from Hershey, we all got together and went back to Hershey so that we could pick up the car. Our youngest daughter, Beth, she sat in the car with Jack on the way home, and my other daughter, Jill, sat in our everyday car. And as Jack drove home with this new old car for us, he dictated to our daughter, Beth, a list of all the things he wanted to fix when he got home, and over the years he was going to take care of it. He truly loved his car. It was like a kid to him. One of the things we have enjoyed using this car with is the fact that he could take it to Greenfield Village to the Motor Muster car show, which we were thrilled that they accepted this car because he was sure if we entered it in the car show, they would never take this car. And I said, well, we've got to try it. We're going to try it. He did all the writing. I got the pictures. We sent it in, and for heaven's sake, we got in the car show. And we're in that car show every year after that, forever, for the Motor Muster. I have to say, the curator of the Henry Ford Museum at Greenfield Village loved this car because it was original. He said, don't paint it, don't change it. Jack, like I said, had this car in black. His car was black when he was a teenager. And he was doing very well with his driver's test until he went too fast at the very end. And the instructor who was judging him said, okay, cowboy, come on back. You're going to take this test again next week. So he did, and then he passed it then. But he was so embarrassed because he was supposed to be taking his friends out that night for a ride. We've had wonderful times. We've been in many, many parades in this car. This car has been a lot of fun for us. It's been a lot of joy, and I know it was a great deal of joy to Jack, and I'm glad he got it. I was in my parents' basement looking at some things they were throwing out, and I discovered this mirror, which is just like ones they used in the older cars like we have the 49 Chevy. Now the mirror, have them built into the visors, but this one was put on by me. Another interesting thing about my husband buying his car when he got his driver's license is that he paid for the car with his own money, the $450 he had earned by mowing lawns over a number of years as a kid. And luckily we were able to duplicate it by getting this car. Hi guys.
So Cheryl, tell us a little bit about this 1962 Pontiac Tempest Le Mans. It's here, and what you remember about the one that Jack and Ray and yourself had. It was a 1962 Pontiac Tempest, red convertible with a white top.
Right. That's the one I remember first, of course. And it was a lot of fun, especially because I didn't have a car at college. So that is where we met at Ohio State University. Jack was in dental school, and I was in the School of Nursing. And I met him at the cafeteria. You guys, yes. All of you, in the cafeteria of our nursing dorm. And then when Jack graduated from dental school, he went directly into the Air Force because in those days they were drafting people, and so everyone in a profession went into a military unit of some kind, and that's where he took that car up there, I believe, isn't that
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And had a good time with it up there as far as it worked right, and it was beautiful. I was finishing school. Then he came back. We got married in 1966, a year later, and during the time we were at our honeymoon, that car, which was gorgeous, got sold. We had great memories of the Tempest. And as we got older, Jack was very much interested in finding another Tempest. So in June of 1978, he found us a Tempest, and it came from California. And to get it back from California, he sent his parents out to get the car on an airplane, and they drove it back. And in the meantime, he found out the car wasn't what he thought it was going to be, and sold it 36 years later without doing anything to it. It was in storage for 36 years. The second Tempest he bought in August 5th of 2004 from Cambridge, Ohio. We went down, bought it, and we drove that one back, and he was happy with that car.
That's this car right here.
That was this car.
Yes.
He stored it, however, for another 10 years without doing anything to it. But in summer of 2014, he started restoring it. But in November 2nd of 2017, it went back into storage for another 2.5 years. But in the meantime, he got sick. He became ill with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that sort of halted his working on this car at that time. And our one daughter, Jill, was very interested in this car, so we told her she would get it, and it has now been gifted to her. It has been restored. I have to say, Ray has been a godsend to us about what to do with the car. We loved it.
I will say this about this particular car. It's a unibody, and they had a tendency to want to rust out and have all kinds of problems. But this particular car is extremely solid. The frame, the unibody is good on it. Suspension is good. It sits straight. It doesn't lean. Doesn't have the Detroit lean to it. The chrome is good on it. He's got all kinds of parts. This particular car is really a find. It's going to make a great restoration. The kids will have it for forever. I mean, it'll just run forever. And we've got an extra engine for it, lots of parts. And I'm just really, really thrilled that somebody's going to take this car and love it.
When we noticed when Jack brought the car home, Congress Lake Country Club is about 15 miles from where Jack and Cheryl live here in Akron. And so odd that it came out of Cambridge, but it was originally from this area, at least at one point in time.
One of the other things I think about this car is so unique is, unrestored as it is, it made the calendar because it sits so straight and it presents so well on camera.
Yeah.
A lot of them, as I said, lean, and they have, this car, suspension-wise and everything, is really, really there.
Yes, we had heard about that calendar competition through the Little Indians catalog that we got every month. And Jack thought, oh, we will never get in that. And I said, well, we're going to try. So we sent the picture in, and we're very surprised that we were one of 12 cars that got picked for the calendar.
One of the things that I kind of remember about it, I was at home, Jack and Ray would have been at Ohio State, and driving this thing back and forth to Columbus. The car had a tendency to burn up or wear out fuel pumps. So I remember one time he called up from a payphone, and Dad had a fuel pump in the garage probably somewhere, and we went down in the evening, it was dark, and replaced the doggone thing.
Yeah.
Replaced the fuel pump by the side of the road.
So that was one of the flaws in the car.
Another thing I remember about it, Jack had this little tape recorder, but I remember he, on the way back from the Air Force Base up in Massachusetts, he put that on the front seat, and he kind of detailed 7 o'clock in the evening on da-da-da, and I'm headed home to see everybody, and you could hear him shifting through the gears, and it just had such a sweet sound.
Yeah.
That was the sweetest sounding car.
It had a great
just a little purr. But I'm sure there's some tapes there that Jack put together many years ago. We also have the tapes that Paul put together. Okay, this is a 1962 Pontiac Tempest Le Mans. The Le Mans being the more deluxe model with more chrome trim and various larger hubcaps and things like that. The engine is rather unique, the drivetrain and everything. DeLorean was part of Pontiac at that point in time, and they had a very popular engine, a 389, which was a big V8 engine. DeLorean made the decision to cut the thing in half. This is half of a Pontiac 389. It's a 4-cylinder. Had a very unique drive shaft. It was a flexible drive shaft. I don't think it was duplicated anywhere. I don't think anybody ever built another one.
Never did. It's under a drive shaft boat, and they did that to get rid of the hump. They took the drive shaft, ran it through a tube,
through a panel in the bottom. It's under tension, slightly warped. It whips around. No hump in the floor, so the floor pans are flat, just like a rear engine, just like a Corvair, which was a great idea.
Next year in 73 or 63, you had one.
I did.
Did it have the same? That was
Same drivetrain all the way back. I drove that car for I don't know how many years, 2 or 3 years through school and service. Took my kids back and forth from New Jersey in the winters and stuff. Never thought a thing about it.
It's a great car.
Get it over 35, 40 miles an hour. It never knew it was missing those 4 cylinders. That sucker would go 70, 75 miles an hour all day long. From between about 10 miles an hour and 35, it was chipping your teeth and knocking your contacts off your eyes. But after that, it was really a runner.
Tell us a little bit about this thing.
Well, Tom had mentioned earlier that they stopped making convertibles, 74 probably.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, they're going to make them again, and I wanted one. And I was looking around trying to find one, but I couldn't find anything. And we went to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and the guy wanted, I think, $5,200 for it. And I don't think I had $1,000 in the bank, $1,500 in the bank. But I wanted this car. I mean, I wanted this car. So Dad said, well, I'll loan you the money. And Jack said, well, I'll buy your little Buick. And I borrowed, I think, $3,000 from Dad and bought this car. And the other thing I remember is he didn't have the money with him. He called somebody at the bank, and they wired the money to one of the booths on the turnpike, and they picked the check up there and took the check, and we drove the car home.
I'll be
and then, of course, we've had it ever since. But I wanted this car so bad, and had my family not helped me out, I would have never been able to buy it.
Yeah.
As I call this the wedding car. I'll bet it's been in 10 or 12 weddings, and we don't drive it, and we just give it to the family and say, take it, use it. In this particular car, there was one of about 18,000 that were made, but what's unique about this is it's a convertible, but it's got every option on it that was available. It's got the load leveler, it has the cruise control, it has air conditioning, it's got automatic lights on it. Anything that you could put on a Cadillac is on this convertible. And it's a blessing and it's a pain in the rear end at the same time, because that's just more things to go wrong with it. If you look at the car now, you'll see it's sitting downhill because the load lever is in my basement right now. I got to rebuild that. 29,000 miles when I bought it. Maybe has 60,000 on it now, 65. When one of my kids had it, a dump truck backed into those big dual wheels and creased the fender right through here. And it had been hit here before, but I didn't know it. And anyway, the guy that was going to do it said, I'll never match the paint. So I said, paint the car. So,
unbelievable paint job.
I'll show you the engine. This is a 429, and it's never been out of the car. And it's pretty much the overhead valve covers. I painted these, and load leveler sits right in here. Here's our air conditioner right here. This is our speed control, cruise control, automatic eye, the old windshield washer glass bottle, which was condensed stuff. Got 4 horns on it instead of 2. It's got the deluxe horn system on it. Just about any option that you could possibly think of is on this car.
Fun grill to clean, isn't it?
Oh, it's a bitch.
Remember doing it with the Dad's car. You get a chamois and you get all the water spots. You come back in a few minutes, there's more water and more spots.
Yeah, when you want to dry it off, you get yourself a box of Band-Aids and a towel. That's about right. Put gloves. Leather gloves. Really enjoyed the car. Just feel really fortunate to have it in the family.
We were talking, Ray and I were talking a minute ago about convertibles in the family. There have been an awful lot of convertibles. Dad bought a car from a friend of the family, Walt Billman. It was a gray 1959 Chevy convertible. Black top, red interior, just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful car. And kind of started a love affair, I think, with our family and convertibles.
Yes.
I don't think was there before.
Never had one before that.
Yeah, Paul subsequently had the 60 white walls,
Yes.
white top, red interior, burgundy interior that you guys took to Florida
Right.
and started to enjoy. And Mom loved this 59 Chevy that was in the family. I think it was you guys' car first.
Yes, it
wasn't
was. Until she got her driver's license.
Yeah, until she got her driver's license, and then But that 59 Chevy kind of started it. Jack subsequently had 62 was the Tempest, and then Jack had the 68 yellow Le Mans. And I don't know that you had convertibles up to this point.
He said 63 Ford, the red Ford convertible.
The red Ford convertible. That was Paul's car. That was,
Right.
yeah, that's right. That was,
And I got rid of that for a 4-door LTD.
did you have a four-door Cadillac?
Yeah, I had a big gray one.
Yeah. It's a 1968 Olds Cutlass Supreme that I purchased over in Pittsburgh back in 2008. Had 30,000 miles, was a car that was used by a family up at Lake Chautauqua during the summer. In really nice shape. Automatic transmission, 350 engine, about 300 horsepower back then. Took it apart, did a frame-off restoration, rotisserie on the body, and powder-coated the frame. So an aftermarket tubular suspension, front and rear. Had the engine built to about 375 horsepower, throttle body carburetor, headers, four-wheel disc brakes. Interior is going to be all new. Taking it over today to have the guy put the doors and the hood and the trunk and just basically put it back together. And I think by midsummer, probably it'll be driving. It'll be rolling. Probably do have rust to it. I've got all the parts. I could probably do it. Yeah.
Well, it might be such a nice job.
You sure he's all right? He's such a great guy.
Well, that's beautiful.
All blacked out. What's wrong to put on or whatever, I'll figure it out. Well, I found this guy about 5 years ago. I was playing golf with a guy that had just had a car redone, was showing me pictures. I asked him who did it. The guy that I had is up in Elyria, and he didn't have time to do it. And he told me this guy, Larry Dumeyer, down here in Norton. So I went over and talked to him, and had two other guys look at it, and neither one of them wanted to do it. The guy up in Elyria didn't have time. Fry's Auto Body was going to do it, and he ended up closing the shop. He called me up. He said, I changed my mind. He said, I'm going to close. So he was done. So Larry did a rotisserie on it. You mount it up to something and kind of spin it, do all the body work and everything. And we brought it back without doors, hood, or trunk, and popped the frame on it, dropped it down on the frame and attached it. And now Larry is going to finish it, put the doors on, put the hood on, put the trunk on, and maybe some of the interior stuff. He does a nice job. He'll do great work for it. And he's responsibly priced. He's an older guy. I was afraid that he might disappear on me. Oddly enough, about a year ago, I was looking on eBay for some things, and up popped a hood, a trunk, and four doors, windows, and all the stuff he's got of mine for sale in Barberton, Ohio. And I'm not positive it was the same guy, but it looked to me like maybe he was selling my stuff. So I gave him a call. Hey, how you doing? I'm ready to get the car over there. Well, I'm busy right now. Good, but I'll call you when I'm ready. I got a couple jobs in the queue. And so he called this morning and said he's ready. So fortunately, we were pretty close, and we're hauling it down there. Tow truck driver's a pretty good one. It's kind of neat to see the thing from the front like this with everything blacked out there like it is. I didn't know if that was going to work, but I like it. Again, I can do the cosmetic work and the paint and radio and under the dash and a lot of that stuff, but the sheer mechanical stuff, the engine work, and changing it over from an automatic to a 5-speed manual transmission, that kind of stuff. Going from drum brakes to 4-wheel disc, and the new suspension we put on, all that stuff Dan did. So he's done an awful lot. If I had to pay to get that stuff done, I can't imagine what it would have cost me. I'm not sure. Is it painted yet? The doors and all that stuff? No.
Inside, not outside.
Got, I think, sail panels on the side. Do you do that stuff? Would you put that in on the interior stuff, or take it to a my poster shop? Okay.
That's good.
Okay. Okay. Beautiful sunny day.
So, tell me how you got this car, Tom.
When my brother Chuck and I were in high school, we had an old Cutlass, a red one with a black vinyl top, really nice car, called a 442, 1968 442, and had that until we got into college. Subsequently, I was given to Ray, and I got Ray's '63 Ford.
So wait a minute, you had a cool car when you were in college. You could drive around on campus.
Not for long. I was a bad boy and took it away.
That'll happen.
So Chuck and I always said, one of us someday ought to find another '68 442.
Yeah.
In 1991, he was in service over in the Philippines and possibly back in Chesapeake, Virginia at that time in the Navy, and went to a car show in Hershey, Pennsylvania, saw this thing and bought it for $10,000.
Yikes.
It was owned by Chevron Oldsmobile down in Columbus. It was their parade car for 20 years. From 1971 to 91, they sold it. Chuck bought it and drove it home to, at that time, I guess, Chesapeake, Virginia. He was in the Navy again, and enjoyed it for 10 years. 2001, he passed away. And my wife at that time, Sue, and Carrie and Dylan and myself flew out to Seattle, met DJ at the house. Ray had just done a bunch of work on it, put new shocks in, had it tuned up, carburetor rebuilt. We flew out and drove it home across the Badlands.
How long did it take you to get home?
I think it was about 6 days.
Yikes.
We went about 300 miles a day, stopped 400 miles, something like that, stop and get a room and get up and do it again the next day.
So apparently it never rained on the drive home. Or did you have the top
we had a couple of days of rain, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We had a couple of days of rain. We had the top up. It's not very good in the rain. The windshield wipers those days are horrible. And a little bit tough, but it rode like a champ.
Okay.
And Yellowstone National Park, went to Mount Rushmore, up through the Badlands, ran out of gas twice. We had a blast there. Thing only gets like 15 miles to a gallon when you're going through the Badlands, and they're 300 miles apart gas stations.
Oh.
Twice in a row it happened to me.
Oh, shoot.
But it's been a good automobile. Had it repainted in 2004. That's really about all it's been done to it. New upholstery and the paint job. It's been a trooper. We call it the Chuckster.
Chuckster.
The Chuckster after Chuck.
And then it went to Columbus. It was a wedding car.
Took it down to
for Lindsay.
Columbus. And we subsequently have taken it on trips. When I picked it up, it had 324,000. It's got 34,000 on it now. I've had it for 20 years. So along with the 71 Cutlass, I've subsequently found a 68 442 very similar to the one Chuck and I had back in high school.
Oh, did you own it together, or was it?
It was basically our car. It was my car, but I
Yeah.
mean, we both drove it.
What color?
Red with a black vinyl top.
Ouch.
And then I bought a 68 Olds Cutlass hardtop that I'm doing a mild hot rod job on. It's
What
only
year did
been
you buy that?
Bought that in 2008, the 442 in 2009.
Okay.
So they've been around for 10, 12, 15 years, something like that.
So that's the frame that was in the back of our yard
Yep.
under tarp. Now,
Absolutely. Bought a frame in Arkansas coming back from Texas. Put it in a U-Haul trailer, drove that back, had it powder coated. That's now the base of the black 68 Cutlass.
yeah, so it's still involved in restoration. When do you expect to have that on the road?
Oh, hell, last year.
Ooh, okay. How
It's
you
a-
doing with that?
It's a matter of getting Dan and I together and getting the time. But that's what happens. Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning cruise, you know.
Gotcha. You have any other cars?
Got Dad's 30 Model A Ford. Got the BMWs, my black one, your silver one, both convertible.
Which I love.
Yeah, yours is a hot rod.
Mine's a hot dog.
That is one fast
It's
car.
a hot dog, hot rod.
Hot rod. It is one fast car.
What would be your favorite all-time 70s car that you'd love to own?
I'm not nuts about the 70s so much.
Yeah?
Insurance companies were screaming a little bit about the high horsepower, you know, not very streetable cars that were overpowered. Kids were killing themselves in them. And,
Ouch. Okay.
you know, they were dangerous. And so they limited the horsepower. So this one went from 350 horsepower down to 300.
If somebody were to say, hey, Tom, let me buy you your dream car.
Jill's husband, Aaron's got a 67 Corvette 427.
Yeah?
It sounds just like the car to have. I mean, that thing just absolutely sounds beautiful.
All right. So, let's go way back. How did your family get involved in cars? I mean, because there's definitely just a passion that runs through all your brothers.
Well, it probably started with my grandparents, J.T. Kimberly, my
Oh,
dad's
wow.
father. Red Oldsmobile, I've told you the story about the day he brought it home and couldn't wait to show anybody, as I understand it. Ran in the house, found out he left the damn thing in neutral, and it rolled back and hit the wall across the street, down the driveway, and hit the wall.
No.
That wall has still got a crack in it, by
Right.
the way. Charlie Schatz, the hardware store guy, my mom's father. He always had Imperials and big Chryslers. He loved big cars. You know, my dad's brother Paul was a hot rod car guy. Mom got to drive the 59 Chevy convertible, gray with a black top, red interior. Just absolutely beautiful. Probably the prettiest car I've ever seen.
Oh, my goodness.
All that, but Jack and Ray picked it up. Jack and Ray bought cars. Dad in 1951 got a 25 Studebaker when he had just started the jewelry store, and he found a 25 Studebaker in a barn, as I understand it, in Worcester, Ohio. It was a barn car, 25, 26 years old at that time. Every summer he would take Jack and Ray for a 3, 4, 5 day trip and just get out and enjoy the car. When I was just born, Jack and Ray were probably, 10 and 12 years old. Started taking vacations in it. Dad
Oh
was
my
really
gosh.
good with the kids. He did the same thing
pretty
with
neat.
Chuck and I 10 years later.
Yeah?
We took probably 4 or 5 of those vacations. Did it until the last time was when I was 15 years old.
Your top speed was probably what? Like 50,
40,
55?
45 miles an hour in the
that's
Studebaker.
it?
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
my
about it.
God. Oh, shoot.
Remember one time Chuck and I and Dad were coming back from, I think it was Chicago, and we didn't want to go home. We got to Medina, 30 minutes from home, and he stopped and got us a motel.
What?
We spent an extra night out, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
We had no idea where we were. I do remember hearing about it later, but we thought we were still 2 days away, and we were 30 minutes away, but
Oh, that's great.
didn't want it to end. We were having so much fun.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah, it was a good time. That was the introduction of old cars, antique cars, I guess, to Dad and the family.
And he have a special place? Did he have a garage where he
He had
did
a
most of the
garage.
work?
He was a true mechanic. He did it in his own garage at the apartments, basically, probably over at Fernwood Drive.
On Fernwood.
Back in the 50s.
Okay.
By the 60s, he was Portage Path in the apartments. And, tore him apart there. But eventually, as he moved on into the 60s, he bought a couple more. He bought a 30 Model-A Ford he's got. So he had the 25 Studebaker, the 30 Model-A Ford. Subsequently, they bought a Model-T that fell into a Model-T Hotrod Roadster.
Whoa!
Jack and Dad both did the work on that.
Oh, gee.
Jack has had that for probably 40 years now. He drives it in parades and things.
Okay.
But Dad also had a 40 Ford that is owned by Ray now. It's a beautiful car.
The Model A 1930 Ford that you have,
Yes.
your dad and mom took, you were telling me, so many trips to Florida. I just can't believe that.
It might have been he and Mom went to California in one of them.
What? That car?
I think they did in that car.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you could.
So they really enjoyed it.
That was the
subsequently, Jack and Ray got into cars. And, Uncle Paul had a Model-A Ford. Dad's brother Charles had a Studebaker. And
When did they start going to Hershey? When did you start doing that with your
that
brothers?
was mid-60s, 64, 5, 6, somewhere in there. Hershey was a car show we went to every year. And basically looked for antique car parts, antique cars. It was a mammoth show, a lot of fun. We're better than 30 years. I don't think they missed 5 times. I think Mom and Dad were coming back from New York or something, and I don't know if they drove by and saw it or purposely detoured to get there or whatever, but this was back in the mid-60s, I'd say.
Okay.
And it was the first time that they had been to the Hershey car show, flea market, whatever it was,
Right.
at that point in time, and it became a yearly event. They went back year after year after that. Here we have a 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88 that Jack and Cheryl purchased. When, Cheryl? Tell me a little bit about it.
We purchased this car in August 11th, 1973, and that was exactly when our second daughter was 3 weeks old. And the reason we got this car when we did is because we were hearing rumors that they weren't going to make convertibles anymore, and we knew we wanted another convertible to keep forever, and that's what we have done. We kept it forever. It's basically a totally original car. I believe the top has been replaced. But this car has been nicknamed by my husband the family truckster. And with it, we went everywhere with our daughters and their friends. We have gone to Cape Cod many, many, many times. We've been to Disney World many, 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 many times. Every spring break, we, when the car was old enough to be considered a classic, we then were accepted into the Motor Muster at Greenfield Village, and we used it there. 1998, our first daughter got married in June. This was the family wedding car for her. Our second daughter got married in 2002. That was her wedding car as well. And it was very interesting because we put pictures of those weddings on the hood of the car when it was being displayed at the Motor Muster. And we could hear people going through the crowds and through the streets. Did you see the wedding car? Did you see the wedding car? And that was fun. That was a lot of fun for us to do that. One of the fun things about having old cars is, although this wasn't old when we bought it, they even wanted it when it was new, was to use it in parades. And we did various 4th of July parades in Fairlawn. And always had people happy to see you and taking pictures of you. We got a lot of pictures from being in parades with all of our cars that were really wonderful that we could never have gotten ourselves, and that was really fun. But the other thing that happens when you're driving a car now that is really old is that people honk at you everywhere you go. And I had a gentleman when I was at a stoplight, and he was at a stoplight. He was in the middle of the street. He jumped out of his car, came over and said, "I want to buy your car." And I said, "Well, it's not for sale. It belongs to our family." And he said, "Well, you might want to sell it." And I said, "No, my family calls this a family member." And so he gave me his card, and he said, "If you ever want to sell it, call me." and that happens when you drive a lot of these old cars. But that's fun, too. It's a fun part of it. This was definitely a member of our family. That is what our daughters always called all of our antique cars, but mostly this one because we used it as a new car. We took it everywhere we went to get ice cream, then back to college with all their luggage. And it was just a very loved car.
Just pop the hood on the 1973 Delta 88 and find a Oldsmobile 350 engine. Does have the quadrajet carburetor. Engine is attached to a turbohydromatic 350 transmission. Here you can see tape that Jack put on there, and on June 6th of 06 it says it had 169,000 miles on it when he changed the oil. Something Jack did to all of his vehicles, even the ones that I had that we changed oil with. He would put a piece of tape like this somewhere, and the speedometer today, or the odometer, shows 72,000 and some odd miles, so it's 172,000 miles on this thing that they've taken everywhere. And it still runs like a top. I don't think he's ever done anything to the engine. They purchased it in '73 thinking that it may be one of the last convertibles available. That in fact became true. I think '74 was about the end of the convertibles because of people being thrown out of them. They felt they were a danger for about 10 years, and then convertibles eventually came back. Is that right, Ray?
That's correct.
That's about what I remember.
This particular car is a 2004 Thunderbirds. They originally came out in 1955, and they made a little two-door convertible for 55, 56, 57. And then in 58, Ford decided to make a little family T-Bird. They went to a four-seater T-Bird. And I would maybe consider that the second generation of T-Birds. And they made that from 58 to 60, and then from 61 to maybe 64 or 5, looking like a rocket ship. And then somewhere probably in the late 80s, they came out with one that was more like a two-door sedan, which I had no interest in whatsoever. And then they came out with this. And I saw the prototype of this at a car show down in Texas. And I said, man, I want one of those. This was about 2001 or 2002. And when they came out, I just didn't buy it. I couldn't buy them. And I didn't want to spend the money. And then maybe this car's about 3 years old, I saw it had 13,000 miles on it. I said, I got to have that thing. My wife can't drive the other little Roadster we have anymore because it was stick shift and really a difficult car to drive. And this is perfect for her. It's got an automatic transmission in it, little V8 engine. You got all the power you want. Has the best exhaust sound to it. Sounds like one of the old Y block V8s, although it's a little smaller block. Just a great car. Top goes up and down easy on it. Very, very friendly, handles well, brakes well, starts. Terrible in the snow, but we don't use it in the snow. Love the color of it. They only made it one color. It's called Merlot. And we get more compliments on this particular car than any car I think that I drive someplace. Everybody wants to buy it, like my brother Tom said before. I want to buy your car, I want to buy your car. There might be 3 or 4 business cards in that dash compartment of people that want this car. We happen to have a 56 Thunderbird too, a white one, that sort of mimics. It's got a bigger scoop on the hood. And when I was a boy, my dad had a 59 T-Bird, a black 59 four-seater. We had a 61 four-seater,
And then that was the end of the T-Birds for us from that point on until we started buying them basically as collector cars. But I just can't say enough about this particular car, how it handles and the engineering on it and everything. It's really fabulous. It's been a good car. See how they've covered up the shrouding. Take a couple of bolts out of here and that all comes off and get at it. Makes it easy to keep clean. This has been a bulletproof car. We probably put 25,000 seamless miles on this thing. And I hope that it stays in the family. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful car.
We're starting this off here today. It's Monday, October 24th of 2022. And just getting together to kind of shoot the breeze with a bunch of family members here about our memory of automobiles and cars and what they've done, what we've done with them through our families and the ones we've owned and how they've kind of created our history, would you say?
Definitely.
Yes,
They've affected everybody, kids and everyone.
Yeah.
We've taken a lot of trips together, haven't
Yes,
we?
we have.
You know, just in the old cars.
Yep.
Remember how Dad used to, he would rush forward. He would drive so quickly.
To get somewhere.
To get someplace, and then we, where is he?
Dad always said that about Jack. He'd drive like a madman to get to Hershey, and then on the way back he'd go slower and slower and slower.
That sounds like,
remember him saying
I'm
that?
sure
I remember
that's
that.
true.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when we were with him in Toronto, and all of a sudden he was gone.
Yes.
And that was before cell phones. And so we had to drive around looking for him. I was telling you that.
Yes.
Right?
For Elton?
Today.
Oh,
yeah.
Dad,
That happened.
We went to
Really?
Toronto, and then we went to New York City,
Right.
and they paid a guy that ran the garage underneath where we were staying to watch those cars while we were there, so that nobody would get into them. But that was funny.
Yeah.
And then we went to Hershey, just not to be at Hershey, but just buy it.
Right. Sure.
There's a question. How did Hershey start? How did our attendance to Hershey start? It was Dad and Mom coming out of where? Like New York or Philadelphia or?
They went through there and probably in 68 or 67 or 68 and wanted to know what was going on. And they said, well, there's a car show, like swap meet, antique car show swap
Flea
meet.
market, something.
Right.
And that was back in the days when it was like a hobby. I mean, guys, talking about a swap meet, I mean, they would swap. They'd say, oh, you need this. Well, it was like, I got 3 of these, and you need this, and I need that. And
Give you 3 hubcaps.
yeah,
for,
free. I mean, everybody was helping everybody. It was like a backyard kind of a barbecue sort of thing. I'll share my recipe with you. This, and then over the years, probably over 15 years, it became almost a business.
We used to go there and we'd walk for 3-4 days sometimes and not see it all.
Yeah,
It was that big.
Jack figured out the spaces and everything that if you walked the entire flea market, you would walk from Akron, Ohio, to Medina. It was 14 miles because you couldn't get separated because you didn't have cell phones.
Right.
So if you got lost, you didn't see those guys.
You wanted to stay at least in the same aisle.
Same aisle to find them.
Yes.
And you'd wear these weird colored shirts or whatever so they'd stand out.
Jack with his black or his blue
Yeah.
hat, what was it, a Ford hat most of the time?
Right.
Yeah.
God.
And Paul, I think one time got us a bunch of Goodyear yellow jackets, so we all had
Yes.
yellow jackets.
Yes.
So you could find
Dad's
people.
wearing that in some of those pictures you
Yeah.
had earlier.
I think it was buried in it.
Wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, so it really evolved over a period of time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I remember the most is that just always amazed me was Jack wasn't of that vintage. He wasn't from 1919 or 1920 or 1930 or 19 whatever it was, but he knew the parts. He'd look at that thing. He'd say, "Well, that's from a."
You did too.
Not like Jack did.
Oh God, I was amazed following you guys around, and you'd be looking for something, but you walk by these piles, and Ray would all of a sudden say,
There it is.
Out of these 50 parts that all look the same, he'd pick that up and I got one, or
yeah.
Jack would do the same stuff.
when I was building the hot rod, the 28, I was on a mission. I mean, I had certain things that I was looking for, like a K-member out of a 32.4,
Yes.
or a 39 clutch brake assembly, or the 150 Ford shock absorber mount.
Transmission or
Transmission. So I knew what I was looking for. And I'd look around and I'd say, okay, this guy's got flathead parts here, he's got this, so it's somewhere in this thing it might be there.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm anxious to do the whole damn field.
Boom.
And Warren Meeks is like,
Yeah, he'd
that
be
a bird?
strolling along, kicking the dirt. No.
I'm having dinner with them tomorrow night.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, how nice.
They called, yeah.
How
but
nice.
it all worked. I mean,
It worked.
Everybody
Not
got
tomorrow,
along. You
Wednesday.
managed to somehow or other get through it.
Yeah, we just had a blast. We had a great restaurant we went to.
Yes. What was that
Lucy's.
one? where
Lucy's
Lucy's.
restaurant.
Is that where you did?
Dr.
Shalansky.
Shalansky. There's
Dad
an old
called him so,
story. Old story that couldn't get into this place, could not get in, needed a reservation or whatever. And somebody tried to get a reservation. Dad said, let me give it a run. But what happened? He walked up and he said, any room for Dr. Shalansky or something?
Is that what you-
And damn if he didn't get us in.
So my dad used to take us in the 25 Studebaker for about 2 or 3 days on a trip someplace to give my mother a break. So that was her vacation from Jack and I. And we were in the Studebaker going to Chicago. And it's one of those really hot afternoons and everything. And the windshield's open. And Jack's sitting in the center. I'm by the window. And this bumblebee, this big black goddamn bumblebee comes in there, hits the window, lands on Jack's lap. And he says, oh my God, picks the thing up by its wings, goes to throw it out the window. And instead of going out the window, it blows back in. I look at it, damn thing stings me. I'm thinking, Jack's the guy that violated. You did all this stuff. I'm paying the price for this thing. But that was my entire life living with Jack.
I remember hearing the stories about you guys in the bunk beds or whatever.
That
was mean.
Should I tell that story?
Sure.
Maybe I hope it's the
I
same
don't
story.
know.
But well, we're in this. Jack's over here in like this twin bed, and I'm still probably in a crib. I might be 9 or 10 years old. I don't know. So I have to go. I have to pee. And Jack says, "Just pee the bed." So I said, "Okay." So as soon as I do that, Jack says, "Mom, Mom."
He had a little streak in him.
Oh,
Good.
Yeah, we had some great times.
What cars do you remember you had as a kid? Your first car, the first one that was really your car.
Really, my car.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think probably the biggest thrill I ever had, one of the biggest thrills I ever had in a car, was a damn go-kart that Jack built.
Oh God.
I was only about 8 or 9 years old, and I still remember that thing.
The red one?
No, the
green one.
The red one's the refined one.
The green one.
The green one. This thing, I got a picture of it somewhere. But that was just a
board.
A board and some 2x4s and a motor that would have killed you.
Yeah.
And we rode that thing all over. We had so much fun with it. I remember Kitty Lou, Wilma's daughter. I remember Kitty Lou came up, and she wanted to ride in the thing. Well, the muffler was, the seat was here and the muffler was here, and she rode on it, and it burned a hole in her dress. And I thought Wilma was gonna. I must have been a $2 dress or something, but she was all upset about that. I remember that was fun.
Yeah, Wilma would be.
Paul's 63 Ford convertible.
Yes.
When I was in dental school, we took it to Cape Cod, and he loaned us that car to take the vacation, our vacation, or what David tells me about you in that 442.
Oh my gosh!
And what a great time he had in that.
Yes.
He remembers you taking him to Swenson's and that, and driving that thing, and you could probably write a book on that one.
All those.
I was telling these guys earlier, I had a trick that I played with them, that I'd be driving down a residential street, not going fast or anything, but I'd kind of go, whoa, and I'd go into somebody's driveway and up over a curb and back into the street. So you had kind of a lump. And the kids were short, couldn't see, but I'd go oh God, I think we hit somebody, or something. I think we hit a dog. Or Dad's brother, Paul Kimberly, who worked for General Electric, GE. Paul just had a knack for cars. He always had great cars as we were growing up as kids. And when it became time for us to get a car or tires or whatever, Paul was the guy that always was instrumental in helping at least Chuck and I get a car. How about you?
Same.
He did the same thing with you guys, got your cars and found them for you, and Paul would come up with these cars. He got the black Ford. I think he got Jack's Mercury, the four-door goofy blue thing that came after the Tempest.
Yes.
Paul came up with all those cars, and if you needed keys or tires, or he was always on top of you, telling you what to do. Paul was instrumental in all that stuff. Dad didn't have much to do with it, I thought.
No, Dad was so busy working, but Paul made all those decisions on cars.
Yes, he did.
What was that brown LTD or whatever? We had one car.
So I came home one time from a meeting or something, and there's this brown car.
Paul switched cars on you.
And I said, what's this car? Well, it was time to get. I love that car. Well, too bad.
This is your new car.
This is your new car.
So we had it for maybe a year and a half, and then it was so bad. We hated it so much we sold it to your sister.
Well, they needed a car and they wanted to know. So we sold it to them.
Paul was unique. He had company cars. He was the first person I knew that had company cars.
Right.
GE gave him a white 1960 Oldsmobile convertible, and somebody did something to him on the road. He had a CB radio on it. Remember?
I do remember that.
He had that big CB radio, and pulls up to the guy at the next light, and he pulls up this thing like he's reporting him. Phew, this guy ran the red light, went up Merriman, and disappeared. Paul said, I got him. He got the biggest kick out of reporting this guy, and he wasn't reporting to anybody.
Well, Walt had that, might have been a 61 convertible with the same CD radio in it. It had the big whip antenna, he put it, and clipped it under the back fender. And
is that the red one?
The red one.
Red 62 Impala.
Yeah, he had that thing. And somebody stole something of it. Maybe it stole a radio or whatever. And so the insurance company said, well, was the car locked? And Walt said, it's a convertible. And he said, well, was it locked? Because if it wasn't locked, it isn't covered. And Walt said, it was locked.
It was locked. It was locked.
Yeah. Dumb stuff they did. Jesus.
Yeah.
I remember when I was really young, I might have been 8 or 9 years old, we went to see the movie Samson and Delilah. And we went down North Street. Well, Paul had this 46 or 48 DeSoto. And he took us down that damn hill.
Fast?
Oh my God! And we went airborne.
Yeah.
And I saw the tops of the telephone poles.
Yeah.
And when we came down and hit the road again, I'm laying upside down. I mean, honest to God, we went. I remember that ride. I don't remember much of Samson Delilah, but I sure as hell remember the ride over to the movie theater.
That guy would go like a bat out of hell.
Yeah. How about your ticket? That's the story.
I didn't get a ticket.
I know, but tell a story. Tell about going to. What was it?
I was on my way to teach a safety program at an elementary school. Anyway, I noticed that there were cars stopped near the school, but I was in a hurry because I was supposed to be there at 9 or 9:30, so I just kind of went on, and a policeman pulled me over. He said, I need to give you a ticket because this is a school zone and, everybody stopped and so forth. I said to him, I'm on my way to do a safety program and I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late for this school. And he said, get back in the car. So I got back in the car and he said, now just stay here for a minute. I'm going to stand here for a minute. And he let me go.
Wow.
He didn't even give me obviously that was a warning.
Yeah.
But that was a non-ticket. I don't think I got too many tickets.
Ran a non-ticket once with some kids in a car going down a hill, towing some kids.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, did he do that in high school?
Super long story short. We had a car that we were going to junk, and I found a guy down in the valley who would take the car. There was no motor in it or anything. It was an old Cutlass.
Okay.
So
yes.
put a chain on it behind one of my other cars. I was going to tow it down over the hill. I pull out of the driveway. David's in the car behind. The brake's still working and everything. And I just start to go down over the first set of hills, and a policeman pulls me over. And he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting ready to junk this car, and I'm just towing it down the hill." And he said, "Who's in the car?" I said, "That's my son." I said, "He's not driving. He's just stepping on the brake." He said, "I never saw you. You never saw me." Get out of here. So we towed him to the bottom of the hill and junked that car. But now that I think about it, I mean, he could have damaged my good car. He could have run into that car.
Oh my God.
Would have had to sue your son.
Worried about the car. Good golly.
I bought that car for, I think, $60 because you couldn't title it. I drove it for about 3 or 4 weeks. And I put a siphon hose out of the gas tank, taped it along the side of the car. Had more goddamn fun with that car.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
And Jack got all the parts out of the car.
Of what car?
The one I junked. He got
He had
hit.
He got a lot of the. In fact, I still got some of those parts.
What did he do with them?
I don't know. I
He
have
put
no
them in
idea.
a box and gave them to me when I got a Cutlass. Yeah. I've got parts that Jack
And you wonder
gave
why
me.
our garage is such a
Oh my
mess.
God.
Oh my golly.
I love our 73 Oldsmobile convertible because we had so much fun with our kids, with their friends, and for a long time. And we still have it. And we still talk about all those memories even today.
It's a family member.
It is a family member.
I think my favorite car over the years, although I love so many of them, but Big Red is a 67 Cadillac convertible, and we got our grandfather clock at Christmas time. We took the kids in the car, remember, with the top down? And we've just gone on lots of trips. We went down to see Mother and Dad with that car in Florida. We've had a lot of good times in that car.
How about you, Tom?
Hard to pull one out. Certainly the 442 was just a fabulous car. Chuck's 57 Chevy. God, what a beautiful car that was. You pulled that out of Cape May, New Jersey. You know, I got to share that with Chuck. We'd trade. You know, he'd take the 442 and I'd take the 57 Chevy. Always thought I got the better end of the deal. But probably the 442. You know, enjoying the BMW, the little black Z4 now. Certainly enjoy the Chuckster. This is the one that's 71 Olds Cutlass. To pick a favorite, God, each one of them had a different time frame that you enjoyed them and lived through them with. How about you?
This is going to sound weird. It would be when I was in the Coast Guard, stationed with the Coast Guard, on my lunch break, and we had Paul's, we got that 63 red Ford convertible. And Sherry came on base to go to the, what they call it, the PX or whatever, the discount grocery store. And I saw her driving down onto that base with the top down in that car and get out of that car. And I thought, it's like watching a movie set. I thought, that's the most beautiful car, the most beautiful woman in the whole goddamn world. And when I think about cars and excitement, I guess that's what I think of. I remember seeing that car and you getting out of it and thinking, that's me. That's my life.
That's my life.
That's my life.
This
And
is
I was just
the rest of my life.
starting out. But that memory will be when they throw dirt on me or burn me up. If you talk about a
You
car.
had made it.
Yeah, that was a real high point in my life.
Yeah.
To watch that, to see that, thinking, wow.
Remember looking for those frames for, your Roadster?
Boy, do I remember that.
Going through that rack of frames, and the guy had them there on the corner, and
I do.
had a whole bunch of them. We brought them out,
And Chuck carried them back. We were there when
Right.
Yep.
Chuck wanted to be part of that. He was,
Yes, he did.
was on the left rear carrying that frame out.
Yep, Chuck was carrying the frame. Remember a picture of him sitting there with the steering wheel? And
I have that picture.
You got
We
that
have that
picture?
Sitting in the center of the frame with the steering wheel.
Yeah,
And
We do.
he's as yellow as you can be.
he's yellow
He
and
was
he's about gone.
He was so sick.
Yeah, he was about gone.
Yeah,
He was really sick.
Yeah, that had to be October of 2001.
it was.
Yeah. Which cars do you have now, and where are they going? What are you thinking?
Well, Beth gets the Oldsmobile because we got it when she was born. Jill got the Tempest. She always wanted that when Jack bought it. She also gets the Model-A, and I'm guessing that Beth gets the 49 Chevy because Kyle loves that. And then that leaves the Speedster. But I want that to stay in Akron.
Okay.
I don't want it to go to Georgia.
You remember driving the Speedster, don't you, Ray?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's not easy, is it?
It's counterintuitive.
It is.
It's counterintuitive.
Beth can drive that car.
Can't
She could drive it.
Good.
Son of a gun.
Yeah, and Jack taught Brad how to drive it before he had a license or anything. I remember we were out at their house in Bath, and we were all outside, and Jack was driving with Brad in the car in the Speedster down the street. And Kathy and Bob were talking with me out in the yard. And they turned around, and Jack said, "Come on, Brad, you know how to do
It's
it."
time.
And so he put Brad in the driver's seat. His parents did not know that.
Yeah.
And as they came back, I heard Bob say, "Brad's driving that car."
Yeah.
But he and Jack really got along
Oh, God,
so
they were great
well.
friends. Yeah,
they were
good
really
friends.
They were good
close friends.
because the family's big and
Oh, it's big.
they all love cars.
Yep.
So most of them will stay in the family anyway. But you know, the 25 Studebaker, I don't know what's going to happen with that. You know, it's going to be 100 years old soon.
Yeah.
So
I'm running out of.
we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, we still enjoy it.
It's getting harder and harder to keep it going.
Right.
God almighty, you can't find parts for it, and it's really hard to keep moving. But I'm going to keep it going as long as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're so lucky to have this wonderful family.
Yes, we are.
We really
We're
are.
blessed.
And this opportunity to
blessed.
share it with future generations. Thank you.
This is really, really special.
Definitely.
Brother Tom, born 51. What do we have here, Ray?
This is a hot rod.
What you doing? I said, you didn't blow the horn. He said the battery's dead.
Hi, guys. I'm Cheryl Kimberly. Thank you so much for coming and talking with me, and here is a goodbye message.
I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late for this school.
Yikes.
And it's one fast
It's a hot dog, hot rod.
Hot rod.
We've been in cars forever.
So as an introduction, we have Jack Porter producing this video. Jack is Sam's ex-husband, Jack Porter's son.
And we won't drive too fast. Keep it on the slower side.
Slow it
Make
down.
it last longer.
That's right. Okay.
Sam,